Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be doing some modifications to the WLtoys V686 quadcopter that has kindly been sent in to me by Gearbest. Incidentally, Gearbest has an August sale on at the moment, so I'm going to be checking that out and bankrupting myself even more. So before I get into the building of it, let me show you what I have done. I have removed the battery tray under there so that I can fit bigger batteries. I've added a Losi connector which ties in with my one cell batteries that I use. I have then taken the 2.4 gigahertz antenna and put it on the outside vertically. Another thing that I have done is I've taken a JST pigtail connector which I've made up here and used the power out on the quadcopter itself to power my FPV plate. This is the 808 FPV plate which you can already see on the channel. So for the transmitter, I have converted it to mode 1. You can already see that video on the channel. But secondly, I have added a SMA connector, and that then plugs into this 2-watt Wi-Fi booster here. But of course, this needs power, so I've created a JST power out to it, and that powers it all up. Also, I have added a 2S battery. Without further ado, let's see how I did all that stuff. So let's take this thing apart. I have sped this up because it took a long time to do. It's got a lot of screws, this one, but that's a good thing. It means it's not going to fall apart in the sky. I'm using that little screwdriver tool that it comes with, which is quite handy. Now the reason I'm taking this apart is, first of all, I'm trying to access that battery bay. Going to cut away the plastic so we can put in a bigger battery. Now this is the first time I've taken this thing apart, and you can see that I'm trying to get the screws out behind the motor shafts there. You need to take the propellers off, and that is what I've done here. And eventually it comes apart, and then I'm going to remove the JST cables here and remove the flight controller, and then we can cut out this battery part here. Then I can put the controller back in, screw it all back together, and the next thing I'm going to do is desolder that JST connector. Then I'm going to add a Losi connector so that I can use my other one cell batteries. They're just my preference. There we go. Next thing, I am taking a drill bit and drilling out the same size as the 2.4 gigahertz antenna. That's just going to slot through the back there, and I'm going to add some hot glue to make sure it's in place. I'm also going to hot glue the Losi connectors in. Probably should have done that first, but I can still just about reach it. Next, the transmitter. I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to desolder the stock antenna. I am going to take this SMA connector and cut it short and cut the outer casing off, peel back the ground wire, and then cut off the plastic around the signal wire. I'm now tinning the ground and also the signal wire. Then I'm going to solder it to the transmitter. It's got 2 solder pads, just going to move the wires out of the way. That's from the mode 1 conversion. So I'm going to solder the ground in on the back solder pad first, and then I'm going to tip the end of the signal wire, and that is going to get soldered in as well. Yep, that all looks good. Now I'm going to cut the end of the transmitter off there. That's going to allow us to house the SMA connector. I'm cutting a lug off the battery plate there, and that is because on the transmitter, the spare hole that is going to create, I'm going to feed this JST connector through here. I'm just stripping the wires there so that I can solder it to the existing positive and negative there. You see that feeds through that hole there, which I have cut the lug off the battery plate. Now I'm soldering this direct to the existing wires, and I want to keep it attached to the AA battery plate as well, because I'm going to be adding this 2-cell battery, but also I want the option to be able to put the original AA batteries in if I want to. So I'm not happy with this solder here, soldering join, so I just have another go at it. I want to make sure that it's a good connection. Okay, so the next thing to do is put the circuit board back in. I want to make sure that all the trims and all the buttons are connected fine, make sure they work. Then I'm going to screw all this stuff back in. There's a lot of screws on this transmitter, but again, That's a good thing. It means that it feels quite robust. It's not going to come loose or snap or anything like that. Really like that about it. So I'm screwing this in because after I'm going to access that power cable there at the top of the circuit board. So what I'm going to do is take this male JST connector and I'm cutting a hole out of the top of it. Now this is going to power our Wi-Fi booster. I'm just making measurements there, just using wire cutters and placing that in there. I'm just going to hot glue it in. You know I love hot glue on this channel. Yeah, you could use epoxy as well if you want, but it did it fine. So I'm cutting these wires short now, and you can see there I'm going to solder it to this power pad here that actually it lights up the LEDs on the front panel to show sort of the battery strength. That outputs around about 8 volts. It depends the voltage of the battery. And I'm just going to tack in with hot glue the SMA connector. It's not going to hold it in place, it's just while I put the transmitter back together. So holding that in place, and then I'm going to take the screw on the top of the SMA connector and screw it in with some pliers, and then that will sit there nicely. So now I'm removing these separations in the battery compartment, just using some cutters there, and you'll see after a while my 2-cell battery fits in there perfect. But also I'm leaving just enough of the divider so that I can still put in the AA batteries if I want to. So I'm just here, just trial and error, cutting away here and just putting the battery in, and it's not quite fitting there, but eventually just move some of the mess off there, cut it a bit closer. Eventually I get it all to fit in nice and snug. See, it plugs in there, and then the battery plate fits in no problem. Just a quick switch on there, make sure we've got power. And the next thing on to the Wi-Fi booster. So I'm cutting the female JST connector off it, and that's because this Wi-Fi booster requires 5 volts in, and of course we've got 8 volts coming out of that transmitter. So to ensure that we get a constant 5 volts, and also to be able to use different battery types with this so I can switch it to different transmitters, I'm adding the FPV Hobby 5 volt regulator. So I'm soldering in there. It's quite simple, this. It's just got your 2 inputs there on the inside, and then here also the positive and negative out on here as well. Really simple. So I'm soldering that in, and as I say, I'm going to be able to use this then with any battery. It accepts 12 volts in there, this regulator, so that means we can plug up to a 3S battery in it, which is going to be nice for using with my other transmitters. So as I solder this all in, what I plan to do next is hot glue over the wires. I didn't film that, but you can see there it's now covered in hot glue, and now I'm taking this 12mm heat shrink, and as that heats up with the soldering iron, there all the hot glue starts to melt and it creates a unbreakable bond, and that is what we're after, because this is going to get plugged in and unplugged quite a lot. So I'm just going to plug it into the transmitter there and plug the aerial on and just make sure that it works. And you see we've got this blue light here on the Wi-Fi booster, and that means that it is receiving signal as well as power. Doesn't light up if it just gets power. So the finishing touches for the transmitter, put the power button back on, and we are done with that. Okay, so next here I've made a pigtail JST connector, and that is going to plug into the FPV Power pod there. The last 2 pins you can see, and luckily the polarity is already reversed. If you watched my channel before, we've got my 808 16 plate here, and the 808 has a reverse polarity. So on here the black wire is the positive and the red wire is the negative, and this is going to reach around to the power input on the 808 plate. Then I'm plugging in my 750 milliamp nanotech battery with a Losi connector. The 808 switches on and it starts recording. Success! So now it is time to go and do a flight. So it's going to do its punchy takeoff thing that it likes to do, which I described in the review of this quadcopter. You can go back and watch that video if you like. you can put the throttle fully up and it doesn't move, but after a couple of seconds it punches up into the air and gives this slightly unstable result for aerial video. However, that quickly becomes resolved, and as you can see here, this has got to be the smoothest video experience I have had from an 808 camera. This quad can go pretty fast, but I just wanted to fly it slow all the time because the video looks so smooth. There's a couple of times when I totally took my hands off the sticks and it looked like it was on rails. Anyways, I'm going to try and anticipate a few questions that may be asked in the comments and answer them here. If you have any more, please post below and I will do my best to answer them. So the first one, what 2-cell battery for the TX are you using? It's the one from the Walkera Devo 7E transmitter. Can you use Dark Edition motors? Yes, you can. They are the same size. What's the range? Well, the range of this setup is about 300 meters, but my video transmitter is attenuating the signal. Without the Wi-Fi booster, I got about 10 foot of range, so the Wi-Fi booster is doing a really good job there. With a 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter, you will get some really good range out of this. How much do these mods cost? Well, I'm going to be putting the links in the description to all of these products used in this video. Should I buy the version that already comes with FPV? Yes, if you don't want to mess around with modifying it yourself. In my opinion though, you will need to add the 808D lens to get a wider field of view. It is also my opinion that the quality won't be as good as what I have done here. Which should I get, the V686 or the V666? Well, in my opinion, they both have their place in the hobby. The V666 is an outdoor quadcopter, and this one is an indoor and an outdoor quadcopter, so it depends what you want to get out of it. Where can I find your FPV plates? I have done full videos on the channel on how to make them if you're interested. Just go onto the search box on my channel and type in FPV plates. I've done the 808 plate and also just the standard FPV cameras with the wide dynamic ranges. They're on there as well. What rates are you using? Well, I'm using 100% rates for the entire flight on here. I tend to find that suits me better, but of course everyone is different, so it's really great that we've got those options there. Now, I get asked this question so much, right? Will you build one for me? And as much as I would like to be able to offer this service, I'm a one-man show, and all my spare time is taken up making videos for everyone to watch. Also, the number of requests that I get for making them for people would need a few more of me. Instead, I make these videos so you can go and make your own. Now, what is the flight time of this setup? It's about 7 to 8 minutes, and that is using the 750 milliamp nanotech batteries, and that is including the FPV setup and the 808 running. Actually, I would say with the 808 camera, probably have slightly less flight time, as I do a flip there, probably have less flight time than you get with just the standard FPV plates, and I think that is just because the 808 does draw more power than the other FPV plates, but still respectable flight time. There is all the questions that I think may be asked. Of course, ask some more. And here, this brings us to a great point. I've got my hands off the transmitter here, and the thing is just so stable. It's not drifting. Okay, it wasn't really a windy day. It was a very dull day. And I do a little dive there as well. And that is something that I have been so impressed with this quadcopter, is its stability. I think it's more stable than the V666. You know, they're very close, but I really like this one, and you can put it in a dive, and there's no wobbles, which is, you know, kind of what you usually get with a stabilized quadcopter. You can't turn the stability off, but you could see there you can do flips by pressing the flip button. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to come in for a landing, and thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please continue to subscribe, and cheers.